Ah, hello again. You've just caught me out because I put the wrong colour in the top of this strawberry, and instead of pulling out the orange, which should be coral, I'm going over the top again with the coral stitching. So don't worry about pulling anything out on these designs, just go over the top of them, and that's my little handy hint. Now, somebody called AC Berry has written in, was that on Instagram, Karen, or?
YouTube.
YouTube, great, okay. And asked a very good question, which is, how do I decide when to use single and when to use double thread? Now, in the 17th and 18th centuries, I see very little use of a double thread. In fact, I always used to say they never used double thread, but I've now seen one example, which might have been a more modern conservator, but I believe it is a double thread use in the late 17th century. So, you know, it actually is a theory of mine, but I've been completely disproved after 30 years of looking at pieces. So the use of double and single thread. Now, in most of the crewel work of the period I prefer, they used a larger thread instead of a double thread. Using double thread on a piece of crewel work now is actually usually replicating the use of a much thicker thread in the past. So normally on the 17th and 18th century pieces, they used an Aran weight or a double thread type of weight of wool, still in 2-ply, but a much thicker thread, and it's rather like parcel string, and that really dictates the sort of stitches they used as well. There is another type of wool called a Persian wool, which is even thinner than a single thread in Appletons, and that's a very, very fine wool, and the wool I prefer is Renaissance, and we use that in more and more of our kits. The use of single thread worked twice gives you a much smoother finish than using a double thread once, but there are certain stitches like French knots that really only work well if you use 2 threads in the needle and 1 twist rather than 1 thread and 2 twists. So I really do explain that very carefully in all my instructions, so I'm really appreciate it when people actually read them thoroughly, watch the videos, see how many threads I'm using and which stitches they're for, and hopefully you won't be making the endless errors and mistakes that I've made over 30 years of teaching crewel work and designing, and I hope that you're going to enjoy the way that I stitch with crewel work.